I'm Lynn Herman for ESPN Boston, here with high school sports editor for ESPN Boston, Brendan Hall, and former head coach for East Boston High School, Malcom Smith. We're going to start off by talking with the Division IV state final championships, Bishop Conley versus Linfield. Bishop Conley winning their first title ever, 65-62. Talk a little bit about that.
First state title in school history for the Cougars. First time in this stage since 1994, the first ever Division IV state championship game. Losing that one was Trinity Catholic, but I was really impressed. They had a big caravan here for a 2:30 game coming up from Fall River. We saw our friend Scott Barboza, the other editor of this site, walking around. He's a Conley alum, taking some pictures there. But hats off to Conley. First-year coach Matt Coote winning his first year as head coach at Conley. And then Tommy Keys, I thought, was the key there. 10 of 10 on free throws in the fourth quarter, 12 for 12 overall. Really kind of icing things for Conley on his first state title.
And what do you believe, Malcom, that Linfield could have done better?
Well, to be honest with you today, I don't think Linfield could have done anything better today because this Bishop Conley team is a team that's going to be able to stay for a couple of years now. They're very young. They're very, very athletic, too. And I just thought today that they just dominated in that second half, as Brendan said, especially with Keys down the stretch on the free throw line. I watched him against Mashpee score 13 points, and Linfield's a very good team. They'll be back also. I mean, they're senior-laden, but that program is great out there. But I thought today it was just Bishop Conley's time. Who would ever figure the first state title for Bishop Conley? But who would ever figured that it would be Fall River, that Durfee wouldn't have had it. But hats off to Bishop Conley because they've done a great job, and that's a perennial powerhouse for the next years to be.
Awesome. Moving on to Division III, Danvers is going to the state finals for the second year in a row. They took the victory over Martha's Vineyard today. What attribute to that? Yeah,
well, I'll say this going into this season. Danvers was a top 10 in our preseason statewide poll, made it up to as high as, I think, 3 or 4, off to an 18-0 start there. Everyone really expected them to be at this stage. However, I don't think people expected Vineyard to keep it as close as they did. They get off the bus, and Malcom and Meyer, like, Jesus, they got some athletes. They come up here. They bring 7 fan buses on a ferry boat over here to Falmouth and make the drive up here, and really some impressive kids. They're long, their leaping ability. I mean, their reflexes. Navarro Anderson jumps for days. Isaac Brown, a terrific athlete. Jack Roberts making some big baskets there in the fourth quarter to really bring it back. So Danvers they came away here, but I think it was a pretty close call. Closer than people expected, I would say.
Pretty interesting last 10 seconds in that game as well. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, they were down. They were down by 3, Martha's Vineyard, and with 10 seconds left. And Martha's Vineyard opted. I think they were going for the 3-point play, but they opted to go right to the bucket and score a quick 2-pointer. Left 5 seconds left on the clock. They fouled. The Danvers missed both free throws. Martha's Vineyard goes down, gets a clean look, but goes wide left, and that's too bad.
Yeah, and it's funny, actually, talking to John Walsh, the coach after the game, that wasn't the intent. They weren't trying to let the kid go tie his head and he coast to coast, and they weren't trying to let the kid get a 3-point shot off at the end of the game. So we're all sitting here going, wow, he's a good chess player, but sometimes it's funny how things work in basketball, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And hats off. You're right about that. I've seen it all. Let me tell you something, though. The MVP of that game, besides Weston, besides McKenna, has to go to Coach Walsh, because I thought the adjustment that he made with 5 minutes left in that game in the fourth quarter, going to a half-court trap and press, just took Martha's Vineyard right out the picture.
Thanks, guys. And we're also going to move on to Division II, Scituate versus Brighton. Guys, that was a great game. Nail-biter all the way. Then the fourth quarter came around. Talk a little bit about that fourth quarter.
Well, they were down at, 11 with 4 minutes to go. And then by about a 3-minute mark, it was a 2-point game. We've said this all year. Brighton can flick on the switch, and when they do, they're without peer in Division II across the state. I mean, Malik James took over at last minute. And that final 10 seconds there, the strip by Nate Hogan, Malik James taking the ball, getting the layup and the foul. I've never seen anything like that at the Garden. Talk about just yo-yoing with your emotions there, that fourth quarter. But that's a legendary sequence of events that they're going to be talking about for years. Wherever Malik James goes on to college, Hugh Coleman 10 years from now, they're going to be talking about tonight. Malik James, the hero of the game, one of the gutsiest performances I've seen in the last minute of any game I've seen in my 3 years covering for ESPN Boston.
And as a former coach yourself, what do you go into that decision-making with 4 fouls in the final quarter to put your star player back in?
Oh, you have no choice. You have no choice. At that time, you have no choice. And as Brendan was saying, it's sometimes better to be lucky than good. Okay, I've never seen anything like that. With 4:09 left on the clock, Brighton was down 11. At 3:28, they were down 2. Okay, Hugh Coleman made a gutsy call, bringing Nick Simpson back into the game, who had 4, bringing Malik James back in the game, who had 4. Malik the Freak, I'm going to call him right now, because I mean he put that team on his back there. He stayed composed, did not lose his head, and they just gutted it out. And this is destiny. There's no way. I'm going to go on record right now. There's no way Brighton's losing. I mean, I've seen them come back from 19 with 5 minutes left, everything else, and after tonight, I'm sold.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned about putting Malik in to start with the fourth quarter with the 4 fouls. Talking to him after the game, he said, I told Coach, put me back in. If we're going to lose, it's going to be with me on the floor. That is a sign of a leader, and I think that was missing a year ago from Malik. You know, we followed them for 24 hours before the game, if you remember the story. And Malik, talking to him the night before, said, I have something prepared for the team. And he didn't end up saying anything on the bus right over to the team. They go down, swing into Maher 43-40 in state final. It was a lot of emotion in that locker room. Some soggy tears, a lot of dusty. The image that I remember is Malik sitting on that floor, collapsed. And this year was really a sign of how he's evolved as a leader. And saying that to your coach at the beginning of the fourth quarter really tells you something about Malik James and how he's evolved mentally. We know he's got the skills physically. We know he's one of the best point guards. You've said it many times, the Rajon Rondo of the Boston City League.
Absolutely.
But that really showed a lot of heart there from Malik James, the way he behaved in the fourth quarter.
And speaking of heart, hats off to that Scituate team and Matt Poirier. He's a good friend of mine, but more than anything else, I told everybody before, this is not your typical suburban team, Scituate. They are going to run. They're going to come after you. They're going to play hard. And I thought they were the aggressors for 3.5 quarters today. And I feel very bad because I thought, and I think everybody in the Scituate fan base thought they had this one here. But as you said, these events here were phenomenal today. Okay, I just don't know how that got off or anything, but, you know, Brighton did it.
And moving on to Division I, Mansfield versus Central Catholic. Guys, that was a nail-biter game and a key matchup between guards. Talk about the battle between those two.
Yeah, and really, you look at the halftime stats, Tyler Nelson has 0 points, and you're thinking, all right, it's only a matter of time before he gets going, and fourth quarter, 2 big shots there. But Mansfield comes right back the other way. Kevin Connor, a couple big baskets. Rocky DeAndre, the point guard, I think he's pretty underrated because we talk a lot about Brendan Hill, the Hockomock MVP, as a sophomore. And he had a great matchup there with Joel Baroa, but the guard play from Mansfield, it's really what's carried them all year. The way they space on a perimeter and their shooting. This is one of the best shooting teams I've seen in a while. The North Quincy fans were joking after the D1 South final. They were the Illuminati. You know, they're so efficient, they might as well be a secret society, I guess. You know, it really just... well coached, and they get along so well, and they know where everyone is on the court. You know, I think that's the biggest key to guard plays, knowing where everyone's going to go.
And there's a lot of discussion whether or not you should foul early in the fourth. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I just thought that, you know, they played it the right way. You know, they played it the right way. And, you know, there's a lot of people behind me who talk about they should stop fouling, about the minute left. But Tyler Nelson, who was missing for 3 quarters, okay, came on. So that, you know, sort of nullified that. But, you know, real quick before I go back in that, talking about Rocky DeAndre, okay? Underrated is an underrated statement for him. This kid can flat out play. Tough Cape Verdean kid from the island of Fogle. He can just flat out go. He's not going to back down. And people have been, you know, all year long, he's not this, he's not that. But one thing is he's a winner. And I thought his defense today on the point guard, I thought his defense helping out with Tyler Nelson thing was very key for Mansfield. And Mansfield's ability to break down one-on-one penetration. You know, they're usually a pass kicker team. They were doing that for 3 quarters. But in that fourth quarter, they were able to blow by a lot of the Central Catholic defenders with one-on-one penetration. That was a key.
Yeah. It's an interesting point that people make with the foul or no foul up 3 late in the game strategy. People will say, I want to play the percentages and put them on the line. I actually looked this up. I tweeted this a few weeks ago. A Ken Pomeroy article actually says the percentages actually favor the people who let them try to be the hero and make the 3-point shot. But smart call there by Mike Vaughn fouling. Under 7 seconds ago, I think generally coaches want to foul. So I think it was a smart call there by Vaughn, playing quote-unquote, playing the percentages, because I think convention, there's no real convention about what the strategy is. It's a great conversation, but once again, we get to show one of the great conversations here, foul or no foul, and I think Vaughn played it right.
Well, I think that he had it very easy, seeing that he only had 2 team fouls with a minute left
absolutely.
In the fourth quarter. So, I mean, we had no choice, you know what I mean? I mean, just play it out, and I think the fouls really disrupted Central. And I feel bad for Central because, as you know, I had them going the whole way.
Yeah.
But, you know, 2 of their big guys are out today and everything else. But that Mansfield team has gotten better all the way ever since since the Emmanuel tournament, the Reebok tournament. Since there, they've just taken off to a juggernaut status, and they're ready to go. And I think there's going to be a good game against them in Putnam, but, you know, if they can dictate their pace on offense and you have to come to their style, you're going to be in trouble.
I want to point out one thing here, Malcolm. Do you remember our podcast from about, 2.5 weeks ago?
I'd like to forget it.
Tell me your prediction for the Malden Central Catholic game. I just want to point that out for the record.
It was. Malden would upset him, but Central Catholic would win the whole thing.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going on record with that.
Well, I guess no one can question the fact that we had great basketball here today. Who's to know what will come on March 16th with the finals. Thanks so much for joining us today. Malcom Smith, Brendan Hall. On behalf of ESPN Boston, I'm Lynn Herman.